back to my channel and to the second episode of Spells and Specialists, the show where we use magic and stories to teach technical topics and communicate science. I am super excited to be back here. My name is Lovis, and I nerd out about reading and writing ecofiction, which is fiction about our relationship with our environment. And I'm super interested in how it can be used as a science communication tool. And with me here today, I have my co-host and fellow spellcaster, C.R. Rowanson. Hi, Clark.
Hello. So I'm Clark, also known as C.R. Rowanson or the Magic Engineer on YouTube, and I love storytelling in general. I'm a little bit obsessed with magic systems though, so that's what my channel is all about. That's what my books are all about. It's all about helping storytellers craft and repair the magic systems for their stories. So, like, this is great.
We are in our happy place.
Yes.
And we are so especially happy today because we have our specialist for this episode. This is Elizabeth Corri Moss-Hunter. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I'm Corri. Thank you for a lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. And this is the second episode. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A little bit about my work as a licensed marriage family therapist, or LMFT for short. It kind of gets exciting with all the letters that come after names. I can only imagine the work that goes into all of that. But I work usually telehealth sessions currently all online with individuals, couples, families, and children. And I help to assist them in improving their quality of life and their relationships. Things like relationships, depression, anxiety, sexuality, or LGBTQ concerns, things related to adjustment, complicated grief or loss, and behavioral issues are right up my alley. I work to develop individualized treatment plans and assessments. I monitor progress and plan post-therapy activities so that clients can maintain healthy relationships and maintain their progress. One of the neat things about my work is I eventually work myself out of a job. So folks often come in with a goal and things they need help with or want to work and accomplish, and sometimes they move on and they don't need me anymore. So,
well, I really appreciate that because I also do freelance developmental editing and writing coaching, and that's very much my approach too. Is if you come to me for coaching, ideally I'm helping you build up the understanding so that you don't have to come back to me. Granted, I love talking with people about their stories, but then you don't have to.
Love that. Getting to engage with people is pretty much my jam. I love getting to share stories and hearing about people's lives. And sometimes I only get brief chapters, and sometimes we work on the content together. So I love that, Clark.
And just so people are aware, if we're looking scattered and all over the place, it's because we're going to be taking a lot of notes.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I'm looking at my notebooks. I've got my pencil. I'm ready. And I am super excited to get stuck in because I know next to nothing about any of those topics. So you're gonna have to go back to basics with me today, I think.
Love it. I love it.
Well, first I kind of wanted to just set the scene a little bit. What we want out of this whole episode is to take this specialty, this field that you're in, and your enthusiasm, your enthusiasm for this field, and use it as inspiration for a magic system, which we will build using Clark's The Magic System Blueprint over
and
on
eventually
his channel.
Then a story will then also be
and then a
story
to bring it to the masses, hypothetically speaking. And so, yes, this first part that we're doing right now is really for Clark and I to sit here and just absorb all the coolness that you're gonna lay on us, and to pelt you with questions, of course.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So viewers, if you missed the introduction video and you have no idea what's going on with Spells and Specialists, the link for that will be in the description below. So you can go and check it out so you know what we're doing and what, the point of all this is. But then make sure to come right back because you don't want to miss all the cool stuff that we're doing. So for the rest of you, we'll just get stuck in. So Corri, what does the day in the life of Corri look like? What do you do on a daily basis, kind of thing?
Yeah, just tell us some more about your specialization.
Excellent. Okay. So as my specialization, I've been in a private practice for quite a while now. A lot of my history comes from working with children. One of my major jams is figuring out what I'm afraid of or what people are avoiding and diving right in, because avoidance builds anxiety. It only makes it stronger. So very early on in my education in psychology, my bachelor's is in psychology, and I have a master's in counseling with the LMFT option. I was terrified of working with children.
Oh, right. You told us LMFT. Okay, sorry. Just took me a second.
The short term there.
Yeah.
And being terrified of working with children. They're like their own age group. They're like a different
entity.
So I just started looking at internships and started taking on children as my clients, and I learned so much so quickly about how to engage with kids, how to work with their families, their parents, their caregivers, and how some of the differences of symptomology of children looks from symptomology of adults, and some of those differences in communication and how to reach the target populations. Teenagers also are a really special place in my heart because they're often told that they need to act like adults, but are treated like children. So that can be a very difficult place to be for a headspace of a developing brain and an identity of self and who they are coming into the world, about to be on their own, and being told that they're not allowed to do those things yet. So that creates a whole sort of different dynamic. So I worked with Fresno County Children's Outpatient Department with just children. I did an internship there, so I was assigned clients. I didn't get to pick my own caseload then. People would come in for an assessment. They would show up on my schedule, and I would work hours and hours and hours with children and their families and doing group therapy for parenting, things like that. And in my clinical work in my master's program, I took on a lot of kids and developed a skill set very early on to face those fears.
So, and you mentioned there a word, symptomology. What does that entail? When you say symptomology, what do you mean?
So symptomology is like, if we look at a range of expression or challenges that folks might experience, it can be something like, I didn't sleep well last night, as a variable, to I have chronic issues sleeping. I can't fall asleep. I'm not staying asleep. Okay. And these are all sorts of different types of categories, right? We can look at anxiety on this scale as I'm nervous, I'm uncertain, I'm experiencing a new situation and I'm not sure how I feel about it or how to handle myself, to I can't stop shaking. I don't know why I've got this constant hum, my thoughts are racing, my heart is pounding in all sorts of different situations across all sorts of scenarios. So we kind of look at symptomology as an expression or observational and experiential types of work on a scale to how clinically significant or impactful is the experience.
Just making my notes, don't mind me.
Yeah, so it's all about figuring out, picking up on these little cues and then figuring out whether there's more to it, like how intense it is and what it might be leading to or indicating. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly.
And you said you kind of compare the symptomology of kids versus adults, and I guess that must be really interesting to look at because they would be very different. I guess adult symptomology, you would have to track back a little bit more through all their baggage throughout all of their life to figure out why a certain symptom is occurring or something, whereas with kids maybe it's like in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. What's the main difference there?
Lovis, you touched on a history, and that's definitely something we work on in clinical settings. When we get an adult, we usually do a brief history of trying to get the overview, like a landscape of what we're looking at and what the client is bringing in, or the influences they might have, the baggage they're carrying, versus kiddos who might not have an understanding for big emotions, hormone changes, body pain or sensations, that they're working on communication still. So we look at some of those influences for what have they learned, and behaviorally speaking, behaviors don't typically happen in a vacuum. A lot of things happen for a reason. And with that background, there are generally four reasons for a behavior. We want more of something, or we need something, and it's an expression of a need, good or bad, like crying. A baby would cry ideally for attention. They're hungry, they're uncomfortable, they need love. So crying just becomes a standard of expression. There could also be access. So I want to keep something, and we typically see this with like toddlers or start to be school-age children with, say, electronics. Tablet time is super motivating for some children, and they want it. So they learn to ask for it appropriately, or they go start sneaking around trying to look at where it's at, and then they go find it, things like that. So they want access.
I imagine that also ties to sharing as well.
Absolutely, right? Okay. I want my thing back. You took my thing, so I'm going to act out and hit you because I'm mad.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or this is my thing, and I don't care if you also want my thing, just like when dealing with other kids. Some things from my childhood are coming into focus.
Are they coming back up? Are they?
Starts to give a frame of reference for looking at things with a different lens. So it's really exciting. One of the other functions of behavior can be avoidance. I don't want to do something. I don't like something. Babies don't always like vegetables, so they find their way to the floor or into the dog's mouth. Or I don't want to clean my room, so I'm going to scream and cry and throw a fit, and I might hit you to get you to leave me alone because I'm pushing you away to avoid a task. Sometimes behaviors happen because they feel good. Like we typically see it in crying, right? Crying can sometimes be a hormonal release.
Very therapeutic.
Absolutely. Or we're frustrated and we're driving and we just go, the futility feelings of rage and exasperation. Sometimes it just feels good for an expression. It can be maladaptive if we start to see things like, it feels good to punch things. And that becomes like a chained reaction, a pairing of behavior.
Feeling personally attacked right now. Because that is something I dealt with heavily all through teenage years and through college, and actually until I met my wife, because that was part of how I coped with that. I would get really, really frustrated with studying or something like that. I would just slam my hands on my desk. And then I met Rachel, who was going to later be my wife. Didn't know that, but because of her past, that would make her very nervous. So I then had to spend a lot of time retraining myself and figuring out what to do with that angry energy. I still don't have great answers, but
But you don't slam your hands on the desk anymore.
Most of the time, no.
Most of the time.
Reduction and awareness.
It still happens occasionally. And also now I have a nervous dog. He doesn't like the loud noises. So if I'm hitting something or swearing, he will come in and his eyes will be red and he'll be shaking. I'm like,
oh no.
Okay.
It's like immediate telling off for doing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is worse because then he'll sometimes come to me for comfort because I'm part of what he has for protection. So
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Anyway,
Corey, how do you respond to the symptomology right now?
Well, I am taking on clients, so if you're interested, I'm happy to do a consultation.
That's my line at the end of the video.
I'll wait for that then. I'm so sorry.
Stealing your spotlight, Clark.
So automatic behaviors that serve themselves. We also see it in behaviors like Self-harm, oftentimes a cutting behavior or scratching becomes a release of a physical tension or a manifestation of an emotional pain with a physical component that makes sense. Emotional internal work can be really hard and difficult even to like conceptualize. So sometimes the act of externalizing that or seeing a physical wound can become a cathartic release, and then a healing component of taking care of the wound becomes healing of the emotional pain as well. So those are some examples of stimming or behavior that serves its own function.
I suppose that your response, like you were saying, these like 4 core reasons for doing something. And I guess once you've figured out which of the 4 reasons it is, that kind of leads you down whatever avenue you should take to kind of counteract those things. Is it like a decision tree when you
Exactly.
kind of follow it down, and so you kind of know, okay, well, this person wants access to something, so I'm not gonna go down the same path as I would as if it was an avoidance behavior. I would approach it differently, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
So what were the 4 real quick?
We've talked about escape, we've talked about access and the automatic functions, and then now we have the attention function, behavior for attention. And I think one of the things I touched on was asking appropriately, like, hey, I really want to spend time together. It's important to me that we do these things. Toddlers are not as well adapted to understand that social construct. So right now I have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. So my 3-year-old's likely to start running through the house and screaming while the baby is sleeping. And we go, shh, but she's ready for attention. That's a signal. So we often find ourselves encouraging her to be aware of her body and asking her questions like, are you telling me that you're looking for attention, or are you trying to get some energy out and you need to move your body? I will share with you this moment of celebration and simultaneous heartbreak when I was changing the newborn baby, and the toddler comes up to me and she goes, Mama, I am so mad that you can't spend as much time with me because you have to take care of baby sister. I was like, oh my God, you used words if my heart is broken.
But you understand.
Excellent job with awareness.
So
I'm sorry though.
Signaled to me to pass off the baby and then go spend some quality time with my other toddlers. So
yeah, I was gonna ask if like your specialty makes it especially difficult, or if it helps you with your own children, because then sometimes you have that removal when it's like a client and their family and you're like, I know exactly what you should do here, whereas when it's you and your own family, right, and you're like, I see the signs but I just can't make myself do it.
It's helping somebody else out with their plot as opposed to figuring out your own plot. Writers know that
I'm
problem.
so good at that though.
I for sure struggle, and sometimes I have the wherewithal to say, oh yeah, this is what I should be doing. I know the right answer, but I'm not doing it. I don't have the patience, I don't have the energy. It's a give and a take, and sometimes I catch myself after the fact of, oh man, I messed that one up. And part of the things with boundaries is also repair, right? When we talk about making mistakes and owning up to our shortcomings, our challenges, our weaknesses, how do you move on from that? How do you grow from that? Or how do you learn from it?
Right. Okay, we should probably ask what her take-home messages were that she really wanted.
Okay, so
I suppose I'm quite enjoying this part.
I mean, we could just keep going like that. I mean, in theory, those take-home messages are supposed to help us if things aren't flowing. So we could just keep going. Like,
I think you're right. I think we should definitely, because we could go on for hours. I have the feeling.
Lovis and I ask lots of questions.
So functions of behaviors. Nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Even adult behaviors, when we do background checks, we look for history and baggage and stuff that's getting stuck or sticking or things that people are unhappy with. Yes, that does look different from adults and children sometimes. And we bring some of those maladaptive things from childhood to adulthood sometimes. But looking at the behavior and the history are really helpful indicators for those types of symptomology and what might be at play there.
Okay.
And then moving forward, maybe one of the other talking points is one of the things I've been trained in recently is EMDR. That is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. It is a form of psychotherapy that's designed to alleviate traumatic memories or stressful maladaptive stuff much faster than traditional talk therapy. It kind of functions on the idea of REM sleep, right? While we're sleeping, there's still a whole lot unknown about sleeping. And so one day I hope you have a sleeping specialist to interview on this show.
I'll write
Write
that
that
down.
Yeah.
A sleeping expert, because there is a whole lot that's unknown in the field. But EMDR is functioning off the idea here that like during deep sleep, REM sleep, there's automatic eye movements that happen. And while you're sleeping, there are new neural networks, new neural pathways, and healing that's going on within the body while we're sleeping, particularly in REM sleep. So EMDR, while we're awake, seeks to mimic some of those eye movement, that processing to help those neural networks take the body's natural path in healing. It functions on the idea that you have the power individually to heal, and sometimes it takes the trained therapist to cue that healing and to help with the processing.
Okay. Is it
I
something?
am fascinated. Oh my, I have never heard of this. This is mind-blowing.
So is there something about the REM sleep or the eye movements that like makes your brain more flexible to new patterns? Is that like, what is it that makes it work faster than processing a different
What is
way?
it?
So there's still some unknowns with it, but during the phase of treatment, it helps with handling the sources of stress, right? When we talk about states of distress or stress, if we look at it on like an XY graph, we'll look at it as like a window of tolerance, right? When people are stimulated, learning, experiencing something new, there's like this adaptive functioning happening within this window of tolerance, right? This is what we can handle. If we, our graph moves a little bit, if we get outside that window of tolerance, there's different things that happen. You can feel like you're stuck in this state of anxiety and hyperarousal where suddenly your fight or flight sense gets triggered and it becomes harder to think rationally, to understand consequences, to make some of those grounded decisions, to follow that longitudinal path forward rationally. That's when we're stuck outside of that window of tolerance. But if it's too low, then it comes out of like a lack of feeling, a sense of numbing. And usually this is like when people start to seek out comfort in maladaptive ways, like maybe there's overeating or sweet and salty foods, that desire to be in bed and rest longer than necessary. Those like kind of mimic more depressive symptoms versus like anxiety and manic symptoms. So EMDR seeks to help people stay within the window of tolerance by stimulating the painful memory, by like poking at it a little bit therapeutically, to stay within or to stretch that window of tolerance. And now what's interesting is that like people, there's no one right fit. What stresses me out might, well, this year that's nothing to me, right? Or Clark, you might be like, yeah, who knows? Maybe children are like the worst thing you can imagine. So the thought of children sends you into a panicking spiral that you have to hide away for days from.
Me.
And so everybody's window of tolerance is a little bit different.
Yeah,
I am, oh my God. We have
That
to come
is
back to
interesting.
this.
I had a thought, but it flew away. So never mind.
It got
So maybe
pushed
then
out by
I'll-
all the mind blowing that's happening
Yeah.
right now.
So maybe I'll just
What is
kind of
the
continue.
D in
The D.
EMDR?
EMDR is the eye movement desensitization. The desensitization part, right? Because then part of this treatment, like the memory is stimulated and activated after we give you like coping tools. We're not going to go throw you into the deep end and expect you to swim. Goodbye for the week. Good luck dealing with this outside of therapy after we poked and prodded these stressful, painful memories, right? We're going to give you coping tools and help make sure you're well adjusted and adapted to deal with some of the stuff we go digging up within the neural network, right? Because we stimulate the memory, and usually there's like a core belief or a memory that gets stuck in processing. It hasn't gotten coded correctly.
It sounds almost like, and I'm not a doctor, so this is probably wildly wrong, but this sounds like the theories and stuff you hear where a foreign object is stuck in the body, right? And so it can't heal properly while it's there, because one of my guilty pleasures is watching things like ingrown toenail removal videos, or like don't ask me why.
Window of tolerance, Clark. Window of tolerance.
Because I'm getting there. Because like if a foreign body gets stuck in there, it can't heal right, and the entire thing is inflamed. But which means they may have to open a new wound or the original wound, cut in, find the foreign body, remove it, and then gradually allow it to heal back in place over that.
Yes.
So it sounds kind of like that, and you wouldn't go into surgery, have them cut your toe open, pull out the piece of stone, and then just send you back out, right? You're like, well, we're out of time, so good luck with your own stitches and the bleeding.
Wound care.
I can't believe you just made an analogy of what she does by comparing it to removing ingrown toenails. I love it.
It's a beautiful analogy, Clark, that works so wonderfully.
It works so well.
So right, we stimulate, we do that care, we do the wound stuff. Usually it's related to like a negative belief about yourself or the world or functioning, the related emotions and body sensations that kind of go along with that to process. And we help kind of instill a more functioning, positive or adaptive belief. So the EMDR is stimulated, right? It goes on this process, and then when the closure happens, right, there's some sense of relief or healing that happens, sometimes as soon as 1 session, sometimes 6 to 12 sessions, much faster than traditional talk therapy. And it can be something as, you know, like a small-ish, if we're talking about stressors and traumas, like somebody made fun of me when I was in 3rd grade, and I just haven't been able to get what I need from that process, and it's still following me today, it's still impacting my life today. That's huge for somebody. So when, you know, to call it small is maybe a bit of a disservice, but to help kind of get a person relief from what they need from that, to process it adaptively so they don't have to carry it in their backpack anymore.
Well, and I know that can be very deceiving from my own work, right? Because going back to the window of tolerance, right? Our responses to the experiences are all different, probably connected to our tolerances. And it's not, I know from going through my own therapy, it's not helpful comparing that stuff, because like you mentioned, oh, it's a small thing. That person may also look at that and say, that is stupid. That is a ridiculously tiny thing. Are you seriously telling me that has been messing me up my entire life? Well, the answer is yes, because like while your engine is like forming and growing, even it may just be like a little pebble that gets stuck in the wrong place, and you're like, well, it's not like the engine got shot or something, it's just a pebble. It's like, yeah, but it's still causing a problem.
He's coming with the analogies today.
I like analogies.
I like analogies too. I'm here for it. I'm so impressed.
I feel like it helps bridge the gap. Like when I get stuck in my nerdy like clinical speak, sometimes that understanding gets lost. So it is super helpful.
And I'll be fair, I'm not just coming up with these on the fly. It's because I've been doing a lot of my own therapy and a lot of my own processing that I've had to deal with some of these issues.
You've got a good tool set for this.
Right.
Well, I mean, on that vein of sometimes communicating this is really difficult. This is why we're here, isn't it?
Right? I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who start to share some of the nuances or the details of some of their past, their history, and it's just totally normalized for them. And sometimes it takes a therapist's insight or that unbiased opinion to say, wow, that sounds like a lot, for them to go, really? Because I don't know, that's just my life. That's just what it is. That's what happened. And starting to then understand that there are other experiences that people don't necessarily share or talk about gives them that lens to start looking at what might be impacting them, or what they're carrying in that backpack that's so much weight. They don't even understand then what life could look like if they removed one of those, if they could walk away from even a rock that's in their backpack.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So that's a super fascinating kind of take home message that you would like to communicate. This sorry, I have to check notes. The EMDR.
Yeah.
EMDR. Was there anything else that you wanted, that you kind of would love people to know more about?
Ooh, with EMDR specifically, I think,
or any other topic that you would like to talk about. Or we can keep it to EMDR if you want, and then we can. You don't have to have multiple.
Right. So boundaries. Often this is like one of the next steps in clinical settings, right? We do the history taking, the symptomology. Yes, there's generally like a treatment plan of which can include EMDR, but that's not always the route people take. And sometimes it's enough to do just like behavioral tracking and planning, or setting boundaries in some cases. So one of my other take homes then is talking about boundaries and the different types and what people can do to help maybe set them, or to consider the types that they have.
So I'm just going to put this out there, Lovis. We could always have Corri back for another episode.
I mean, it sounds like we have plenty of material here.
Because so far, I've been taking my notes. It seems we've got some really big take-home messages that could take a lot to really bring across, each on their own. So far, I have understanding the cause of behavior and appreciating that nothing happens in a vacuum. We've got EMDR just as a thing.
As a thing.
Which is just a whole own thing. One other thing that I kind of picked out through all of these conversations is probably the importance of understanding biases and normalization of problematic issues and traumatic events. And then just boundaries also as a whole thing.
Yeah, it sounds like we have enough for multiple episodes there. Do we want to
be a reoccurring guest if that works out well?
Oh, we would love to have you. I'm having a great time, and I've made so many notes, and I've already learned so much. I'd like my understanding of this from where it was a half hour ago to where it is now is ridiculous.
Hopefully then you'll have enough tools to go home and examine some of your own or your friends' histories.
Oh, God,
and then start sending them your notes. Hey, this is what I learned. Go check this stuff out.
Yeah,
I know. I'm gonna need some time to digest, I think. But I think you're right. I think if we focus in on a take-home message that for this episode, just because otherwise we will be here and happily, I might add, but we will be here for a very long time. So if
I think this is just going to be a recurring problem we have.
I think so too. I have the feeling. I have this funny feeling that
specialist.
I guess I actually have two questions for you guys. And that is both Corri and Lovis. Of the stuff we've talked about, which one is most interesting to you? And which one do you feel is either least understood or most misrepresented?
Lovis, I'm going to ask you to answer before I do, because I feel
I was going to do the same, because I thought I might bias you if I answer it first.
See, I cheated
I won't
by
change
asking
my
you
answer.
guys instead of
yes,
me.
Yes, you did. You cheated. You absolutely cheated. I'm going to turn it back around on you. But I will answer. And I'm going to say the EMDR just because I've never heard of it. So it might not, I mean, I might be very, not well versed in this area. I'm not, but I've never heard of it. So I assume that it's not very well understood. And it has absolutely blown my mind. So I find it fascinating. And I think even just the notes that I took, we could go off on, we could just head straight into magic building from this, like just from the notes that I took. So that is something that caught my interest, caught my attention immediately. So Corri.
Fair enough. I wanted to say one of the easier or more digestible components might be the behaviors, and the normalization or expanding on symptomology, just because it has an ability to be digested and applicable for folks. And with the wide array, has a lot to encompass in terms of content.
I mean, but what it sounds to me is, Clark, you thought you'd dodged a bullet, but it sounds like you have to be the tiebreaker here. So,
Well, in terms of breaking the tie, I think we should actually go with the symptomology and behavioral triggers, because I would actually like to focus a couple of reasons. One, I think EMDR is going to be the easy way out. Like there's a lot of stuff there that would be very easy to tie to a magic system. I also think it would be easy to tie it into a magic system in a way that is misleading of the core principles, which could potentially be tricky. But primarily, Corri is our guest and she is mostly interested in the other one, so we're going to stick with that.
yeah, that's good. I like that answer. I was worried you were going to back me, and then I was like, actually, I think I'm going to switch teams. I'm going to go with Corri. I'm glad you stood your ground, Corri.
I'm happy to put a link in for research into EMDR for anybody listening, watching, who wants to go research their own or find a certified EMDR therapist. Happy to drop the link and some information there if that's helpful.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So
going back to behavior and symptoms.
Yes, then. We're going back to behavior and symptomology. So I think we've kind of covered my next question, which was the question of why those, and what did you want to achieve by communicating those topics of behavior and symptomology and triggers and all of those things. Like what is it? Do you want to clear up misconceptions? Do you want to educate people about what the possibilities are? Do you want to reach someone who is potentially very anti-therapy, something like that? Like what is the motivation behind doing this kind of science communication?
Or even potentially through the story, presenting it in a way that they may actually walk away with some of these tools that you would normally give out in some of your sessions. Like any of those.
I'm gonna yes, and I think it's really helpful. Psychology kind of gets a rap for being a soft science. There is an art form to connecting with people, to conceptualizing and working on a treatment plan to understand what somebody is capable of or tolerant of, while being considerate of their background and their preferences and their sensitivities for moving that forward. There is no one therapist for any one person. I'm not going to work well with everybody. Just like I encourage people to try or interview a couple of different therapists to find one that they like, because it's not always easy to find those, like if we talk about values and principles, right? These are more abstract terms. But in my training as a science, Fresno State operates their master's program of counseling with the clinical expertise. They back up their training with a lot of science. So that's probably one of my own biases that I bring into the field, is clinically supported modalities of therapy. And of that behavioral work, right, the 4 functions of behavior and defining operational goals, things that you can observe and track and sort of monitor, really helpful for progress or finding troublesome spots that might need some work. That became maybe my bias or my lens for helping people move forward and work myself out of a job at the same time.
So it sounds like I'm doing a lot of interpretation. I do a lot of interpretation and reading between the lines with my own coaching. It sounds like awareness is always going to be a thing whenever you're doing any kind of communication, which because by learning about it, you become more aware. But it sounds like it's about correct information, really trying to communicate the core tenets of behavioral patterns, and potentially have exercises and analysis methods in the story that people could possibly be like, huh, I wonder if that works, and try it on their own. Is
super
that right?
exciting? Yes, like the psychoeducation, the support for clarifying some of those issues, and maybe something to try or apply for perspective or science.
Okay, so it sounds like we have our direction and we know what we want to do with it. So the next questions that we have really are for leading into the next section of this episode of Spells and Specialists, which is finding the seed crystal. And that, of course, is Clark's domain. So we are going to send you, dear viewer, over to The Magic Engineer, which is Clark's YouTube channel, and you will be able to pick up this conversation, this thread, and hold on to all that excitement that we've built, because I realize that we've built you up and then we're just kind of dropping you, but just head over to the other YouTube channel because it's up.
We'll
I
build
can
up the
see you
excitement
wanting to
all
say
over
something,
again.
Clark.
That's all. Like we don't stop being excited. Like we'll just build it back up again.
Yeah, we'll just build it back up. So just in case we lose some people, Corri, why don't you tell all the viewers where they can find out more about you and what you do, and if they want to get in touch with you, how they can do that?
Absolutely. So more about me, I am working on building a website.
Okay.
But until then, I have a LinkedIn account. I'm happy to share that with you folks. I also respond to my work email. I'll leave that. That's Ecorrimoss@gmail.com. I also have my phone number, which I also respond with texts. It's a pretty easy way to get a hold of me. So I can also leave that information with you.
Okay, well, I'm trying to wrap this up, but I'm still going with all of our stuff, and I'm keen to get onto the seed crystal. So that is all from us for this section, but definitely hop on over to The Magic Engineer for part number 2 and continue this conversation with Corri Moss-Hunter about all of this cool stuff. Go.
Make sure
Clark.
you like and subscribe to Ecofictology.
It's like I don't know how to do YouTube.
I'm gonna hold on to all of this new neural networking, all of this anxiety that I have to take on and resolve, hopefully, some of this exciting content. Lovis, Clark, thank you both. Wonderful questions. I've had a marvelous time here with you both, and I'm excited to get to go to the next part too.
Awesome.
I mean, I can't do a better sign off than that. So
Okay.
we will see you in the next section.